Welcome to the live stream at First Unitarian Wilmington podcast. Here we will share some sermons, talks, interviews, or conversations we call life journeys, and also occasionally music. I'm Reverend Larry Piers, minister at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. If you enjoy what we are offering, please share it with a friend. Our purpose is to spark conversations and to share what we value as a Unitarian Universalist congregation with a wider community. To find out more about us, please visit our website, firstuuwilm.org. And now, welcome to this episode of Livestream at First Unitarian.
It's so good to be here with you this morning. I'm honored to be asked to speak on a Sunday that's devoted to peace and justice. I thought maybe I should wear a tie for this, but then I realized this shirt is more appropriate. And so I'm standing here without a tie in solidarity with Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, a few weeks ago, I attended a pro-democracy rally in Rodney Square, where a couple hundred people carried homemade signs and supporting democratic, and that's with a small d, democratic values. You know, protests in Delaware tend to be kind of small things, informal things, and you run into people you know. And I was very delighted to run into George and Hune and Julie Brewer, who were in the crowd that day. And it all led to having lunch together and then to George inviting himself, actually, thank you, George, to come and play for the service. So I look forward to hearing George play his violin at the end, following my talk. Now, and speaking of rallies, today after worship we're going to go out on Concord Pike and express our alarm at what's happening in our country by joining a demonstration for freedom and democracy. Now, in Rodney Square, some of the homemade signs that I saw mentioned fascism, and that's the topic of my talk today. One of them spoke directly to me. It read, "My grandfather fought fascists in World War II. I will fight them too." Well, I'm a little older than that person because in my case it wasn't my grandfather, it was my father. My father, John F. Lott, who spent 2 years of his young life fighting the German army across North Africa and Italy. My parents' story really has a kind of cinematic quality. They met in the fall of 1942. Remember the Summer of 42 movie? Yeah. They met on a blind date, and my father was 22 and a dashing second lieutenant in the Army. He and my beautiful mother, just turned 20, had a whirlwind wartime romance, and in November, they hurriedly married. 6 weeks after the wedding, my father shipped out for Morocco and North Africa. My mother was pregnant with my older brother, David, who was born in August 1943. My father did not meet his firstborn son or hold my mother until nearly 2 years later in the spring of 1945. It's a true story. Fascism had been defeated and my father could come home. And so for most of my life, fascism was confined to history books. We learned about it as an evil, genocidal aberration, an interruption of humanity's forward progress toward democracy, prosperity, and freedom. But in recent years, fascism has escaped from the history books. It's back among us, and we need to face it head on. Today's fascism is not the same as Hitler's or Mussolini's. Fascism takes very different forms in different places where it arises, in each society and cultural context, different goals and outcomes depending on political history and cultural context. Thus, it is often easier to recognize fascism through its tactics rather than its outcomes or its political agenda. So let's diagnose the current situation by examining the tactics of fascism that are being employed. Now, in his book, How Fascism Works, the philosopher Jason Stanley argues that fascism's fundamental tactic across cultures and countries aim to create and enforce division, to separate the population into us and them. Any analysis of fascist politics describes the very specific ways that fascism separates us from them by relying on ethnic, religious, or racial distinctions, by using difference and division to shape its ideology and ultimately its policies. So we're going to look at the 10 tactics of fascism with Helen's help for the next couple minutes. Thank you, Helen.
Yes,
Let's make sure you're wired up.
I think so.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. How about say testing 1, 2, 3?
Testing 1, 2, 3. That's a good
Okay, there
idea.
we go. So for your part, as we go through these, I want you to just sort of quietly use your fingers to count how many of these tactics are you seeing in today's world in the United States. And then later at the end, we'll look at your hands, and we'll maybe have a little show of hands, like 4, 5, that kind of thing. So, okay, let's go, Helen. What are the tactics of fascism?
Number 1, a mythic past. Fascists always present the idea that there was once a glorious past, that we were once a great nation, and when we were great, the dominant racial group ruled over others.
Now, this is the MAGA tactic right there. Make America great again, right? It used to be great, it isn't now, and we're going to make it again by doing all this crazy stuff. And myths, myths are made-up history. They're convenient lies in a way, and they often have a lesson. And so the lesson here is that our greatness was not lost by our own actions, but taken away by some group designated as the other, us, them, right?
All right, number 2, propaganda. All social movements and all politics use propaganda to persuade. Fascist propaganda, however, makes a distinction between friends and enemies.
Fascist propaganda is directed at the other. It casts the other, currently immigrants and a few other groups like intellectuals, as a threat, and it promotes the idea that outgroups are fundamentally opposed to the nation. Once fascism takes hold, merely dissenting might make you the other.
Number 3, anti-intellectualism. Authoritarianism creates a cult of the leader who sets the rules about what is true or false. Institutions that teach multiple perspectives on history always threaten the leader. Expertise is always a threat to the leader. Science is a threat to the leader.
Thus, we see attacks on higher education, punishing the media, reporting facts, attempting to control our scientific and cultural institutions. all in the service of the leader's lies. Alternative facts. If intellectuals are telling the truth, they are a threat. Are you teaching anti-racism or critical race theory? Then you're a threat.
Number 4, unreality. Fascists undermine what we know to be true and convince us that A, everyone is lying, and B, the lies don't matter. In political terms, the center of democracy is truth. You cannot function as a democracy, as a democratic citizen, if you are being lied to.
So Jason Stanley, the author of the book, How Fascism Works, these are all drawn from his book. It's a wonderful book. And he says, if you're going to rip the heart out of democracy, you get people used to lies. If you're going to rip the heart out of democracy, get people used to lies. Now, are you counting? Go ahead, Helen.
Number 5, hierarchy. Hierarchy is absolutely central to fascism. It's the big lie at the center of things. White supremacy, male supremacy, abled supremacy. These lies assign people superiority and the privileges and benefits that go with that superiority.
Now look around the room. Look at me, look at Helen. There are a lot of privileged white people in this room, and in Unitarian Universalism in general. Will we be able to dismantle this hierarchy? Can we share our privileges and benefits to achieve true democracy? Now we're halfway through. Next.
Number 6, victimhood. Once you have convinced people that they are justifiably higher in the hierarchy, then you can convince them that they are victims of equality. Fascists tell people that equality is victimizing them by making them lose their rightful place or power.
So hierarchy leads into victimhood. And Jason Stanley writes, quote, "The goal is to make people feel like victims, to make them feel like they've lost something and that the thing they've lost has been taken from them by a specific enemy."
Number 7, law and order. Under fascism, the definition of law-abiding means loyalty to the dominant group. Members of the dominant group, by their very nature, are considered law-abiding. Marginalized groups are seen by their very nature as not being law-abiding.
So Helen, there's a second part to this one.
Okay, 7.1. Fascist law and order. A, has nothing to do with justice or quality. B, structures who is legitimate and who is not. C, will ultimately be enforced by violence.
This makes me wonder about police violence. Is police violence a form of fascist law and order? Is it employed to maintain the hierarchy? That's just something to think about.
Number 8.
Okay.
Sexual anxiety. The fascist leader will always say, your women and children are under threat. You need a strong man to protect your families.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fascists make conservatives overwhelmingly terrified of transgender rights and gay, lesbian, and bisexual people and their families.
In every case across cultural and historical settings, this is a fascist tactic. According to fascists, our siblings with different sexual orientation who are trying to peacefully live their lives are actually trying to destroy the majority, and they're coming for your children. That's what they say.
Number 9, Sodom and Gomorrah. Fascist movements typically rest on an urban-rural divide. Fascists use a toxic trope of the biblical story of Sodom and Gomorrah. In this trope, pure, hardworking, real members of the nation live in rural areas where they work hard with their hands.
You know, the other side of this is true as well when politicians talk about inner city voters or urban voters. We all know what they mean. Black and queer folks, immigrants, in some cases Jews, and other people that the fascists seek to control or eliminate. Final slide, please.
Number 10, Arbeit macht frei. Work shall make you free. Fascists create an idea that minorities, immigrants, and others are lazy, and these groups need to be taught a work ethic. The mechanism they use is forced labor, whether it's prison labor or work requirements for benefits. The targeted groups must provide free labor as a form of moral education.
Moral education, indeed. Yeah. Now, in fascist ideology, the ideal of hard work is weaponized against minority populations. Hardworking versus lazy. It's just like law-abiding versus not law-abiding, the out-group and the in-group. These are at the heart of the fascist division between us and them. And for your information, the German words, Arbeit macht frei, were emblazoned over the gates of Auschwitz.
Okay.
Thank you, Helen. That wasn't easy, really. So how many recognitions did you get out of 10? 9, 8, 5? Yeah. Anybody have all 10?
Yes.
Yeah, most. I mean, I think there's a couple that might be that they haven't used yet. Okay. So now let's turn to how we can respond to rising fascism as Unitarian Universalists. I'm so glad you're here today to hear this. Now remember, this isn't the first time that we have faced fascism. My father faced fascism, right? And it's not the first time we've been called upon as a religious community in a crisis. In the mid-1930s, the Reverend James Luther Adams, who became one of our leading theologians, visited Germany while a divinity student at Harvard. He was alarmed by what he heard and saw: vicious anti-Semitism, takeover of universities and cultural institutions, censorship, fear. Adams saw one of his friends and a fellow divinity student arrested and without warning and sent to a concentration camp. Adams himself was detained and interrogated by the Gestapo. I'm thinking of ICE. When he returned to the United States, James Luther Adams sounded the alarm and began to develop a theology of community that in some ways led to the social consciousness of Unitarian Universalism today. Unitarians also responded directly to the war in Europe. Following Nazis' invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1938, the American Unitarian Association asked Reverend Waitstill Sharp and his wife Martha, who was a social worker, to go to Prague and assist the refugees, particularly Jews and intellectuals fleeing Germany. When Prague was occupied, the Sharps narrowly escaped arrest. Returning to the United States in early 1939, they organized a second trip. Based in Lisbon and Marseille, they worked tirelessly to distribute food, to organize transfer of children, arrange escapes. The transfer of children to the United States became a model for later kinder transport and during World War II. The Sharps' work led directly to the formation of the Unitarian Service Committee, and now the UU Service Committee. And you'll hear a little bit more about today's UUSC from Beverly Baxter in a few minutes. Now, what about 2025? Here we are. Earlier, I alluded to Reverend Cecilia Kingman, whose words I used in some of my commentary. She wrote the Berry Street Essay, which is a prestigious essay every year delivered at the UU Ministers Association convention at GA. In recent years, the essay has served as a sounding board for our ministry and sometimes a powerful critique of Unitarian Universalism. Reverend Kingman didn't mince words when delivering her essay in Pittsburgh 2 years ago. UU World magazine quoted her in an online editorial about fascism. Quote, "It's vital to understand that we are past the point of voting the fascists out. We're past that point. We have entered an era of violent civil conflict." And she emphasized the need for strategic and collaborative nonviolent organizing. The editorial goes on to say, the UUA has long worked to defeat racism, homophobia, transphobia, and other forms of oppression. That's how the yellow shirts came about. Standing on the side of love became side with love. And it was an expression of our love for all people, no matter what their sexual orientation is. Along with identifying and responding to fascist behavior in society, that's the editorial again, Kingman challenged us to examine our own lives and our own faith to recognize tactics and unthinking attachment to antiquated power structures. And our faith tradition is rooted in historic hierarchies, very hierarchies that fascists seek to promote and restore. That's Kingman speaking. She added, "We've got a lot of work to do to dig out the roots of this evil." And she noted that the debate over adding an eighth principle to our 7 revealed that our own faith struggles with attitudes that reinforce white supremacy and oppression. That's a quote from her. Now, for my part, I will tell you that I agree that we must overcome those habits and constraints of privilege to effectively and honestly oppose the fascist threat. Now, I'm really going to close with an announcement and then a few words of care. I'm really pleased to announce that First Unitarian's Human Rights Task Force, in cooperation with several other pro-democracy groups, will host a workshop on April 30th called Strategic Nonviolence 101. Participants will receive basic training in nonviolent resistance and gain an understanding of nonviolent direct action. This will be a registration-only event, no walk-ins, and look for details in some upcoming e-news, maybe even this Friday. Finally, this is difficult stuff. How will we be able to contribute to fighting fascism short of sacrifices that my father's generation made? The Quaker strategist and nonviolence trainer, Daniel Hunter, says that the key to taking effective action in the current situation is to avoid perpetuating the fascist goals of fear, isolation, exhaustion, and disorientation. And that's what we've been subject to in the last 2 months. Veteran activists will tell you that self-care is the first duty of change agents. So here are 5 things you can do right now to prepare yourself for the long haul of saving democracy. First, trust yourself. This is an era of great social distrust, and the place to begin rebuilding that is with yourself. 2, find others that you can trust. Look around the room. Constant attacks on social systems make us turn away from each other. Find just a few people, and maybe some people that are not in this room, that are not in our circle. Find those people and meet regularly, invest in trust, stay grounded, support each other even if you're on somewhat different paths. 3, grieve. Grieve. We're all thinking, I can't believe this is happening to our country. We're in a daze, we're sad, we're numb, we're confused, and we're fearful. So hold each other close, breathe, accept. Your grief is the pathway to acceptance. 4, let go of what you can't change. Do you remember the serenity prayer? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's really notable that that prayer comes from the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. It was written as he was watching the rise of Nazis in Germany. 5, find your path. These initial weeks have been crazy, for sure. But specific resistance pathways are beginning to emerge, and here are 4 roles that you might consider. And there's a lot of detail to this, and I'm not going to go into it, but you'll understand. A, protect vulnerable people. That's an important role for some of us. Second, defend civic institutions. We're all involved in other institutions, and let's make sure that they survive, including Unitarian Universalism and First Unitarian Church. 3, disobey and disrupt. Now that appeals to some of us. And finally, try to build some alternatives to fascism. And I'm not sure exactly what those alternatives look like, but they don't have the same tactics that we were describing here this morning. So my conclusion is that we can still write letters and postcards, but they may not be enough. We can still sign petitions and call our representatives, but that may not be enough. We can still do all the things that we have always done to bend the arc towards justice, but this challenge will demand more of us. Will we, like the Sharps of Czechoslovakia, like my father in 1942, will we face fascism straight on with faith, courage, and determination? So today I'll stand in solidarity with you as we gather on Concord Pike. It's a beautiful day for a demonstration. Thank you.